A shopper stands in front of a rack of clothing on hangers holding an item of clothing. Figure 12. One price is one of the marketing mix elements and a factor that impacts customer decisions. Credit. Modification of work, thrift shop helps consumers. Community by W. Wayne Marlowe /Uzeg Humphreys /Flickr. CC by 20. Chapter outline. 12. 1. Pricing and its role in the marketing mix. 12. 2. The 5 critical CS of pricing. 12. 3. The 5-step procedure for establishing pricing policy. 12. 4 pricing strategies for new products. 12. 5 pricing strategies and tactics for existing products. 12. 6 ethical considerations in pricing. In February 2005, Amazon launched Amazon Prime, which offered unlimited 2-day delivery for millions of items, one at a time when consumers were accustomed to paying high shipping fees and experiencing slow service. The membership service, $79 per year, offered a new alternative. It was a first-of-its-kind pricing structure that has sparked many companies to do the same. Today's subscription services cover everything from toilet paper to dog toys. Amazon Prime is still arguably the most prevalent subscription service in history. In 2021, Amazon reported its Amazon Prime members had reached 200 million worldwide. 2. The membership, according to a public letter from Jeff Bezos, executive chair of the Amazon board, takes the effort out of ordering. No minimum purchase and no consolidating orders. 2-day shipping becomes an everyday experience rather than an occasional indulgence. 3. Since its first offering in 2005, Amazon has raised its prices only 3 times. In 2014 to $99 a year, in 2018 to $119, and most recently to $139 a year. 4. While rumbles in the market suggested that these price increases might drive away customers, Amazon has proven this was not the case. The price increases through the years also included new benefits: Amazon Prime Video, Prime Pantry, Prime Reading, and many others. The company demonstrates that consumers are, in fact, willing to pay higher prices, so long as they can perceive value that is added to the increase in price. Learning outcomes. By the end of this section, you will be able to 1. Define pricing. 2. Explain pricing and its role in the marketing mix. 3. Explain the psychology of pricing. Pricing defined. Anytime anything is sold, a price is involved. Recall that during the exchange process, a seller is offering something of value to a buyer in exchange for also something of value. This value to the seller is often referred to as price. The practice of pricing is not a new concept. Some of the oldest records of prices ever discovered were found on clay tablets with symbols in Uruk, located in modern-day Iraq. The records are written receipts of exchanges of sheep, beer, and barley, and date back to 3300 BCE. 5. You may recall that price is one of the 4 Ps of marketing, or one element in the marketing mix. Once a product has been developed, marketers must determine at which price the product or service will be offered to the target market. Today, pricing is one of the more difficult decisions that marketers must make in the marketing mix, because it directly impacts the perception of value from the customer as well as the company's bottom line. Poor decisions in pricing can have immediate and catastrophic effects on profits that are difficult for companies to recover from. Price decisions must be linked to a product or service's real and perceived value while also considering competition, supply costs, and when discounts should be offered. Simply put, price refers to the exchange of something of value between a buyer and a seller. The price determines how much revenue the company will earn and drives the financial health of the organization. However, marketers cannot simply price products and services based on the expected revenue of the organization. The price must be set so that the buyer sees value in the product offering and the price they will pay for it. In other words, marketers must put the perception of value in the product's price at the forefront while also considering the financial impact to the organization. While price is what is referred to when discussing most goods and services, price can take on many terms depending on the exchange that is taking place. In higher education, you are paying tuition, the price, in exchange for your education. If you need an attorney, you are likely going to pay a fee, the price, for services rendered. When you are traveling and have to pay a toll, it is the price you pay for using the road or bridge. Regardless of the exact terminology used, pricing of goods and services have the same basic elements. Elements of pricing. While a marketer is determining the price of goods and services, they must keep in mind that pricing must benefit both parties involved in the exchange process, the seller company and the buyer customer. Both parties must see value in the product process through pricing for the exchange process to be successful. We'll first discuss how price is an indicator of value to the buyer and then turn our attention to the seller. Price as an indicator of value. When a buyer purchases a product or service, they seek to satisfy a need through the purchase. The customer will, consciously or not, use several criteria to determine the amount they are willing to spend to satisfy that need. These criteria ultimately lead to the value that the customer sees in the product. The price-value equation is a subjective assessment by a consumer about what they deem as a value. The price-value equation states that as a customer's expectations are met at what they consider an acceptable price, value is realized. Value is related to the quality and price of the product, and the formula is value equals quality, price. For example, if a consumer purchases a high-end designer Chanel handbag for $11,000, they might equate the value to a beautiful, high-end, well-made handbag that will last for many years. They may also subconsciously believe the bag will portray a certain social status while carrying it. For them, there is value and quality in the product, and they are willing to pay the high price. Consider another example. You are in the middle of fixing dinner, and you realize you don't have enough milk for the dish you are preparing. There is a convenience store just a block away from your house and a grocery store 5 miles away. If you send your partner to walk to the closer convenience store, they will pay more for the milk than if they were to drive the extra 5 miles to the grocery store, which would be less expensive. With the higher-priced item at the convenience store, you are paying for the convenience. The value in this scenario is in the time saved even at a higher price. With these two examples, the perceived benefits are directly related to the price-value equation. Perceived benefits can include status, convenience, brand, quality, etc., and can vary from buyer to buyer or even situation to situation. Perceived costs can also include a host of criteria in addition to the price printed on the price tag. Let's return to the milk purchase example. If the situation were different, say you were not in the middle of cooking dinner, would your decision change? Perhaps. You will still consider other factors before making the decision. How long does it take for you to drive that extra 5 miles? Is the grocery store known for having long lines during the time you will be shopping? Do you need other items you can only get at that store? Does the store carry the brand of milk you prefer? These are only a few of the many considerations you make before you decide to make the purchase. These are all perceived costs and are weighed against the perceived benefits the buyer considers when determining value. Marketing in practice. Upside. A smartphone with apps displayed on its home screen is on a pad of paper on a table. Figure 12. 2 Upside is an app that benefits both customers and businesses by playing on the psychological effects of pricing. Credit iPhone home screen by Freestocks, org/Flickr, public domain. Founded in 2016, Upside is an app that promotes itself as saving customers money on purchases at gas stations, as well as helping local brick-and-mortar businesses earn more profit. Here's how it works. Upside links to gas stations, restaurants, and grocery stores within a specified mile radius of the user. The user chooses to claim an offer on the app and has 4 hours to upload the receipt. The linked businesses are those that have contracted with Upside to drive business to their establishment. Once redeemed, cash is deposited into the user's account and can be cashed out for gift cards or to a PayPal account. Upside is banking on the value equation as well as psychological factors of pricing to attract both buyers and sellers. Gas prices, for example, are relatively unchanged from station to station in a small geographical area. If the user is able to get 25 cents cash back per gallon on their fill-up, they may swap convenience of the closer station with that of getting a cash reward at a station a few miles away. If the buyer chooses the station with cash back over one without, the seller gas station also finds value in a one-time or new customer. For more information about Upside, visit the app's website. Price in the marketing mix. Recall that the marketing mix elements include product, price, promotion, and place. Marketers create value through the maximization of benefits within an acceptable price point using the marketing mix elements. Price, however, is the only element of the marketing mix that directly produces revenue for the company. The other elements are considered costs to organization. Another way to think of price as differing from the other elements is to understand the price not only creates perceived value for the customer, but also harvests monetary value for the company. Because price is the revenue-generating element of the marketing mix, it is vital that marketers set the right price both to match buyer perceptions and to maximize company profits. Profit is determined by subtracting total expenses from total revenue. The profit equation. Recall that the goal of any for-profit company is make a profit. The price marketers set for goods and services offered will have a direct impact on the company's profit-making ability. Therefore, it is imperative that the price set is one that achieves value not only for the buyer, but also for the company. Certainly, buyers would prefer a lower price, or even free, for goods and services. It's simply not feasible for a company to give its products and services away for free. The company would cease to exist very quickly, which does not serve either the company or the buyer well. Rather, it is in the company's interest to set prices that create value for the buyer and profit maximization for the company, as this gives the organization the best chance of continuing to create value in the long term. So, what is the best price that creates value for the seller? In short, it's the one that creates value for the buyer and simultaneously generating the maximum profit. If a price is set too high, the buyer may refuse to purchase because they do not see the value. In turn, the company loses out on profit. Alternatively, if the price is set too low, the company may be losing out on profits when a buyer would be willing to pay a higher price. Profit is the financial gain of a company, or the difference between the amount earned and the amount spent in buying, operating, or producing something. It is the difference between total revenue and total costs and is calculated with the profit equation. Profit equals total revenue, total costs. Let's look at this formula more closely. Total revenue is the money generated from normal business operations. It is calculated by the sales price of a product times the quantity of units sold. For example, a company selling wireless earbuds for $19. $99 that sold 5,000 units in one period has revenues of $99,950. Total costs of a company are the costs of sales and operating expenses. It is all expenses related to operating the business that are directly related to producing a good or service, and that are indirectly related to producing goods and services. In other words, it includes items such as building leases, employee salaries, and electricity, as well as direct costs in producing the product, such as component parts and equipment. Total costs can be categorized as either fixed or variable. Fixed costs are those expenses that do not change regardless of the number of units sold. For example, if the company selling wireless earbuds makes 1 unit or 1 million units, the company still has to pay the mortgage for the building it is occupying. The mortgage payment does not increase or decrease based on the number of units produced. Alternatively, variable costs do change based on the number of units produced. In the wireless earbud example, the company would spend more per unit if it ordered fewer units. If it ordered a higher quantity of units, the unit price would decrease. In determining profit, the total costs include both the fixed and variable costs. The formula is total costs equals fixed costs plus variable costs. When setting prices, the marketer must determine how much profit can be made from the sale of goods and services. However, as mentioned earlier, profit is not the only deciding factor in price. Much research has been done on how psychology also affects the perception of pricing. The psychology of pricing. From a marketer's standpoint, these are all factors that must be considered when setting price. In addition to the value perceived by the buyer, the marketer must also understand other psychological factors that influence the buyer's perception of price. Several psychological pricing examples are discussed next. Price anchoring. When Steve Jobs introduced the Apple iPad during a keynote in 2010, he showed off the high-resolution screen and talked about its revolutionary features. "What should we price it at?" he asked. If you listen to the pundits, we're going to price it at under $1,000, which is code for $999. He put a giant $999 on the screen. He finally went on. I am thrilled to announce to you that iPad pricing starts not at $999, but at just $499. The screen then showed the $999 price being crushed with the $499 price. The crowd went wild. The concept of price anchoring relies on the first piece of information that a buyer sees. This acts as an anchor or a frame of reference for what the buyer expects a price to be. Steve Jobs used this concept in his introduction of the iPad. The anchor price he quoted was $999. This immediately made buyers believe the product should be priced around $999. However, when Jobs showed the actual price, starting at $499, the buyers immediately believed, psychologically, that it was a great deal. Viewers did not know what the worth of the iPad was. They just believed they were saving nearly $500 by having the initial anchor of $999. Artificial time constraints. Marketers, particularly retailers, often use the psychological strategy of artificial time constraints. These trigger a sense of urgency in the buyer. If they don't buy today, they'll miss out on a great deal. Whereas a consumer may have been on the fence about spending money, these artificial time constraints act as a catalyst for consumers to spend money right now. And there is a lot of power in artificial constraints. Consumers are afraid of missing out and don't want to later regret not buying. But consumers can often find the same prices many times throughout the year because retailers use this tactic frequently. Price appearance. A study on the effects of auditory representation in pricing showed that buyers believed $1,555. $83 was a very complicated price and difficult to comprehend quickly. The study further outlined that a price of $1,555, no cents, was better, but that buyers were able to more easily and quickly comprehend a price of $1,555, no commas, and thus more likely to pause and consider the product. 7. If you've ever gone to a fancy restaurant, you may have noticed the prices on the menu are in a small font and don't have zeros at the end. The price will be listed as $29 instead of $29. Psychologically, longer prices appear to be more expensive because they take longer to read. This effect is augmented by the use of a dollar sign. Similarly, the use of prices with multiple syllables seems more expensive because consumers pronounce the prices in their head. In short, the longer it takes to read and pronounce, the more impact the buyer believes it has on their wallet, which is explained by price appearance. 9. Price gouging. Price gouging is when companies or individuals take advantage of a situation, typically an emergency or natural disaster, and charge exceptionally high prices for products or services. In some states, like New York, it's illegal for businesses to price gouge during a state of emergency. 10. In fact, New York was the first state to enact a price gouging law. In 1978, when there was a shortage of oil for heating in the winter and the lives of young and elderly people were threatened, the state created a law where companies could not sell goods or services at excessive prices. 11. Can you think of recent examples where price gouging was a potential concern? During the COVID-19 pandemic, several states posted on their government websites lists of items that couldn't be subject to price gouging. Currently, the U.S. Department of Justice provides a list of items that can't be hoarded or subject to price gouging due to COVID-19 precautions, including masks and other personal protective equipment, PPE, respirators, ventilators, and medical gowns. 12. There have been other instances where price gouging was an issue. According to AccuWeather, some of the most rampant examples of price gouging came during the most destructive storms in recent years, such as Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Sandy, Hurricane Harvey, and Hurricane Irma. 13. After Hurricane Katrina, a hotel manager boosted room prices and was sentenced to 5 years in jail. 14. Careers in marketing. Pricing analyst. A pricing analyst studies the market and analyzes data to determine the best pricing for products. This article from Zippia provides helpful information about the job role, including qualifications, career paths, salary, education, resume templates, and online courses to improve skills. Indeed.com also provides a thorough job description that outlines top duties and qualifications. The best way to understand the core of any job is to learn from people who have done the job. Watch this video from a pricing analyst where he discusses his career. Also, check out this article on what makes a great pricing analyst. Some people wonder how a pricing analyst and a data analyst differ. Learn the answer to that question in this article. Once you've determined this may be the career for you, prepare for an interview by watching this video. Knowledge check. It's time to check your knowledge on the concepts presented in this section. Refer to the answer key at the end of the book for feedback. When you receive an email from your favorite clothing store, it is having a one-day sale where everything is 50% off. The retailer is using a form of psychology known as artificial time constraint, price appearance, profit, fixed costs. 2. Which of the following best describes the profit equation? Profit equals fixed costs, variable costs. Profit equals total costs, total revenue. Profit equals total revenue, total costs. Profit equals fixed costs plus variable costs. 3. Marquis has decided to purchase a new kitchen table. He looks at various brands online and decides to purchase one that is $500 more than the others, because it is a brand his parents had when he was growing up and they offer free delivery. These factors indicate Marquis has perceived in the higher price table value, artificial time constraints, costs, profit. 4. Killy sees an advertisement for a new computer. The advertisement portrays an initial price of $699 that has a large red X through it with a new price of $499. The advertisement is utilizing which pricing concept? Artificial time constraints, price appearance, price gouging, price anchoring. 5. The perception of a buyer's value includes which of the following? Profit a company can expect from sales, perceived benefits less the perceived costs associated with a purchase, revenue expected from a sale, costs of manufacturing the product. Learning outcomes. By the end of this section, you will be able to 1. List the 5 critical CS of pricing. 2. Characterize the 5 critical CS of pricing. Cost. What should you charge for a product or service? As you've probably discovered by now, pricing is not something that marketers approach without a lot of research. Using the 5 critical CS of pricing can help to determine the best price, one that provides optimal value to the buyer and profit maximization for the company. Figure 12. 3 illustrates the 5 critical CS to consider when pricing: cost, customers, channels of distribution, competition, and compatibility. The 5 critical CS of pricing are cost, customers, channels of distribution, competition, and compatibility. Figure 12. 3. The 5 critical CS of pricing: attribution. Copyright Rice University, OpenStax, under CC BY 40 license. Cost is the most obvious element of the pricing decisions. As we've already discussed, you must know the cost of doing business, both fixed and variable, before you can set an adequate price. However, cost alone cannot be the only basis on which a pricing decision made. After all, buyers never know, and don't care, how much it costs a business to produce its goods and services. Link to learning. The 5 critical CS of pricing. Scale Finance has provided an excellent article that may help you get your mind around the 5 CS of pricing. Customers. Customers are another key element to pricing decisions, as you've learned already in this chapter. Marketers must determine not only what customers expect a product or service to be priced at, but also what those customers are willing to pay. Toyota manufactures cars and markets them toward the middle class. Through research, it has determined what its target market is willing and able to pay for a particular vehicle. Alternatively, Lexus, which is marketed as more of a luxury car, has a higher price point and is marketed to a different market than that of Toyota. Channels of distribution. Many products are sold through channels of distribution, intermediaries who move products from manufacturer to end users. Intermediaries affect the prices of products because they also need to maximize their profits. Therefore, pricing decisions must consider profits, expenses, and the value they are adding to the product or service. IKEA began as a mail-order catalog in 1953 in Älmhult, Sweden. Today, It is a global home furnishings brand that focuses on sustainability. 15. Its distribution channel consists of the manufacturer, dealer, wholesaler, and retailer. Each of these channel members are in business to make a profit. Therefore, the price strategy that IKEA utilizes must help to ensure that each member is financially satisfied while making a profit itself and keeping the price that is of value to the end user. If any of the channel members or the end user does not find value in the price set by IKEA, the entire channel becomes weak and unsustainable. Link to learning. IKEA. IKEA is a very interesting company to study when you are learning about marketing and business. As this blog examines, it has 1,600 suppliers for manufacturing products that deliver to 186 global stores. That's a complex and successful system. The MBA school website provides an explanation of the IKEA marketing strategy and the 4Ps, including IKEA's distribution model. The Contact Pigeon blog outlines IKEA's strategy that made it the successful company it is today. Competition. Every company and product faces competition. Even the most unique products are competing for buyer dollars. Buyers' perception of one product in comparison to that of alternatives has an important impact on pricing decisions. Gazelle Bikes is a top-tier manufacturer of bicycles. The bikes offered by Gazelle have a starting price point of $1,499. $1,601 of Gazelle's competitors, Giant, has a starting price point of $1,720. 17. For bicycle enthusiasts, these price points are important when comparing one brand with another. An enthusiast who comes across a new brand of bicycles with a starting price of just $200 would not position it with Gazelle and Giant bicycles. Compatibility. Panama City Beach has been one of the most popular spring break destinations of college students for decades. In fact, it is considered the spring break capital of the world. 18. It is well known for its late-night parties, concerts, and celebrity sightings. Hotels and clubs along the beach of Panama City drive their marketing efforts toward this segment of the market. College-aged spring break goers. The prices they set for the weeks of spring break are compatible with both this segment of the market's ability to pay and the business's profitability. Conversely, hotels in areas of Florida that are more family-friendly set prices that are considered a value for families and promote the hotels toward families rather than college-aged partygoers. Pricing decisions are not made in a vacuum. When marketers set a price for a good or service, it must be consistent with the other marketing objectives. Imagine if McDonald's starting offering a $20 ribeye steak. This decision would be inconsistent with the marketing of the company's low-priced fast food, would be confusing to customers, and thus would not be successful. 19. Marketing in practice. The 5 Cs of pricing. The 5 Cs of pricing has long been a standard for marketing practitioners. However, some practitioners also consider another area when determining price: context. Context refers to a more complex strategy of pricing where marketers set and change prices according to variables external to the company. For example, an ice cream truck in the U.S. Midwest would arguably have more traffic during the peak summer hours and less during the colder winter months. The owner of the ice cream truck would change their prices to best fit the context, in this case, weather. The product, ice cream, remains the same regardless of the price, but the price is changed to fit the context of the situation. The appropriateness of using this strategy depends on several factors, including the product category, market size, and other nuances of the industry. Knowledge check. It's time to check your knowledge on the concepts presented in this section. Refer to the answer key at the end of the book for feedback. 1. Which of the critical CS of pricing includes taking into the consideration the value of the product to retailers and suppliers? Cost. Competition. Channels of distribution. Customers. 2. Amir is the head of marketing and is explaining to colleagues that the company's new boutique bed and breakfast near the ocean should not be priced similarly to the local Super 8 motel. Amir explains that the new bed and breakfast is of the highest quality, has posh amenities, and is therefore being marketed to upper and upper middle class couples. Amir is explaining which of the critical CS of pricing. Cost. Competition. Customer compatibility. 3. Kevin is a marketing intern at a large corporation. They are tasked with presenting a price for a new service the company will be offering. Which of the following would you recommend Kevin do first? Analyze the critical CS of pricing. Choose a pricing strategy. Create an advertisement. Ask his friends what price they would be willing to pay. 4. Which of the following statements is false with regard to pricing? Customers are interested in the price of the product, not the cost to a company. Cost only includes the materials needed to produce a product. If cost is not considered in pricing, the company will likely be unsuccessful. Costs include both variable and fixed costs. 5. Which of the following is not a critical C of pricing? Customers. Cost. Competition. Commitment. Learning outcomes. By the end of this section, you will be able to 1. List the 5-step procedure for establishing pricing policy. 2. Describe ways to determine the pricing objective. 3. Identify ways to estimate demand. 4. List ways to estimate costs. 5. Explain how to analyze the external environment. 6. Discuss selecting pricing strategies or tactics. Determine pricing objectives. Whether a product is new to the market or established, marketers face the challenge of setting prices. Recall that the main objective for pricing is for the buyer to perceive value in the product while the company maximizes profits. Marketers often use a 5-step approach for establishing pricing policies, see Figure 12. 4. The 5-step policy for establishing pricing policies are displayed as circles in a horizontal row, with a point pointing rightward to the next step. Starting at the left, the policies are: determine pricing objectives, estimate demand, estimate costs, analyze the external environment, and set pricing strategies or tactics. Figure 12. For the 5-step process for establishing pricing policies, attribution. Copyright Rice University, OpenStax, under CC by 40 license. During the first step in establishing pricing policies, the marketing team will set the pricing objectives, see Table 12. 1. The most common pricing objectives are based on customer value, cost, sales orientation, market share, target return, competition, and being customer-driven. It is not uncommon for more than one objective to be set within the company. Let's take a look at each of the pricing objectives in more detail. Objective description: customer value based on a product's added value. Cost based on the cost to produce a product. Sales orientation developed to boost sales volume, S, of a product. Market share focused on increasing market share. Target return focused on a specific profit at a specific time. Competition developed based on competitors' prices. Customer-driven focus on what the customer is willing to pay. Table 12. 1. Pricing objectives. Customer value-based objective. As you've already learned, it's essential to have a deep understanding of the value a product will provide for customers. Before Jim Semick and his team launched GoToMeeting, a conferencing app, they developed the pricing of $49 all-you-can-meet flat-rate pricing. This pricing was unique to the industry, and Semick stated that they determined this pricing structure based on dozens of interviews with potential customers. From these interviews, the GoToMeeting team discovered key areas that would provide value to customers not only through the product itself, but also through the flat-rate price structure that was easy to understand. 20. Semick utilized the customer value-based objective, one in which the company has a good understanding of the value-added benefits of a product and sets its price accordingly. Cost-based objective: a fairly simple way to price products and services is using the cost-based objective. This pricing objective sets prices based on the costs of doing business, which were explained earlier in the chapter. The biggest pitfall of utilizing this pricing objective is that it might not align well with the customer's value perception. Remember, customers don't know or care what the cost of doing business is, so long as they receive value in their purchase. Therefore, marketers run the risk of overpricing the product. Marketers using this objective also run the risk of pricing their products too low and failing to maximize profits. Consider the manufacturing of a smartphone. Assume the total cost to the manufacturer to produce one smartphone is $3,000. This cost includes all expenses to the company for producing this one smartphone, product costs, variable and fixed expenses. The company chooses to set the selling price of this smartphone to include these costs plus a profit of 10%, which sets the final price at 3,000 plus 10% times 3,000. 21. Sales-oriented objective. A company may wish to seek a boost in sales volume of a product. In this case, marketers would choose the sales-oriented objective. The goal of a sales-oriented objective is to increase the volume, or units sold, of a product against the company's sales over a period of time. This objective is achieved by raising or lowering prices to increase sales. An increase in sales assumes a direct impact on profits, thus maximizing profits. Consider the smartphone manufacturer again. Executives have set a sales goal of 1,000 units within the first quarter. Marketers may choose to lower the price of the smartphone to meet the goal. So perhaps the company changes the price from $3,300 to $3,100 for a short period of time until the sales goal is reached. Note that it is still covering the cost to manufacture the product and still making some profit. Market share-oriented objective. A market share-oriented objective is one in which the company's pricing objective is to set prices based on those of the competition. This strategy involves comparing similar products being offered in the market and pricing at, below, or above those prices depending on the product's offering. The cell phone market is one example of an industry that leans on market share orientation. The biggest suppliers of cell phones, Apple, Google, and Samsung, take their pricing cues from one another and are priced very similarly. 22. Target return objective. A target return objective is one in which marketers calculate the price so that it returns a specific profit in a given period of time. Let's assume that a company has invested $1 million into a new product. Company executives wish to recuperate 10% of those costs in year one of sales. If it costs the company $2 to manufacture 1 unit of product and marketers estimate that it will sell 50,000 products in the first year, marketers know they will need to price the product high enough that it will yield the desired results. The obvious drawback to this objective is that much of the decision is based on estimations of units sold in a given time frame. Competition objective. A competition-based objective, as its name suggests, is when a company sets its prices according to the prices of its competitors. Amazon uses this pricing objective often with some of its most popular products. Using data intelligence, the company gathers the prices of products of its competitors and sets its prices just below the price set by competitors. 23. Customer-driven objective. Some companies choose to set prices based on customer-driven objectives. That is, what the customer is willing to pay for a product or service. Auctions, e-trades, and bids are common examples of customer-driven objectives. eBay, for example, allows a company or individual to place an item for sale on its website. Often, the interested buyer will bid on the item, thus stating what they are willing to pay. The highest bidder is then able to buy the product. Estimate demand. After setting the pricing objectives, marketers will estimate the product or service's demand. Demand is an economic term that refers to the buyer's desire and willingness to purchase a product or service at various prices. All other factors being consistent, an increase in price will result in a decrease in demand. The demand curve is a visual representation to understand demand. Understanding the demand curve. The demand curve is a graph that shows how the demand for a product or service varies with the change in price, as you can see from Figure 12. 5. The price P is located on the vertical axis, and the quantity Q demanded is located on the horizontal axis. As the price of a product increases, the demand of the product decreases. The demand curve is represented on a line graph, with price P represented on the vertical axis and quantity Q represented on the horizontal axis. Supply is represented by a line. As price increases, quantity also increases. Demand is also represented by a line. As price decreases, quantity decreases. Where the two lines intersect is indicated on the graph. Figure 12. 5 Demand Curve Attribution. Copyright Rice University, OpenStax, under CC by 40 license. The relationship between price and demand shown in the figure above is contingent on certain conditions remaining constant. Such conditions include substitute goods, personal income, and consumer tastes, which are discussed further below. Changes in these conditions can cause a change in demand that might not follow this basic concept of the demand curve. The demand curve for prestige products. One pricing strategy that negates the demand curve is prestige pricing. Prestige pricing is a strategy that marketers use to set high prices, knowing that demand will increase with higher prices, because the higher price increases the perceived value of the product. Prestige pricing is closely tied to brand image and appeals to buyers who see value in elevated status. Consider these brands of shoes. The Adidas Yeezy Boost 750 costs around $76 to produce, but sometimes sells for over $1,000, while the D Rose 5 Boost costs around $43 and sells for around $100. So why the large price difference? The Yeezy Boost 750 pricing strategy is that of prestige pricing. The allure and exclusivity of the Yeezy Boost 750 allowed the company to price the shoes at a much higher price. 24. Link to learning. Prestige pricing. In this article, HubSpot explores the pros and cons to prestige pricing and things to consider when implementing this strategy. Included are several prestige pricing examples such as the Adidas Yeezy Boost and the D Rose 5 Boost, diamonds, cars, AirPods, and t-shirts. Demand elasticity. What will be the impact of demand for a product if the price is changed? If the product is discounted, will demand increase? If the price goes up, will demand decrease? The concept of demand elasticity helps marketers answer these questions. In short, demand elasticity is a measure of the change in the quantity demanded in relation to the change in its price. Mathematically, it is derived from the percent change in quantity demanded divided by the percent change in price. If you have been considering buying a new home, would the prices of homes sway your decision? Perhaps so. Home prices are considered elastic because the price has a huge impact on the demand for new homes. Additionally, there are many options for housing, including apartments, roommates, living with relatives, condos, etc. 25. As a second example, consider gasoline. Since we need gasoline to get to work, school, the grocery store, and meetups with friends, it is considered relatively inelastic. There are very few substitutes for gasoline. Because gasoline has inelastic demand, the price may fluctuate considerably, but the demand for gasoline remains relatively the same. Consider the higher gas prices of 2022 averaging over $5 gallon across the United States and even higher globally. Even though the prices have risen, the demand for gasoline has not changed because people still must travel to work and other essential places. 26. In summary, if a product is determined to be inelastic, the demanded quantity does not change with a change in price. Conversely, if the product is elastic, the demanded quantity will change with a change in price. You might be asking, what makes a product elastic or inelastic? There are several factors that will help determine how elastic a product or service will be. Factors in demand elasticity. When determining the demand elasticity of products and services, there are several factors to keep in mind. These include substitutes, the effect of income, time, and cross-elasticity of demand. See Figure 12. 6. Let's explore each of these in depth. The factors in demand elasticity are availability of substitutes, income, time, and cross-elasticity of demand. Figure 12. 6 factors in demand elasticity. Attribution. Copyright Rice University, OpenStax, under CC BY 40 license. Availability of substitutes. Substitutes are products and services that are similar to the one being offered. If a buyer can easily choose a different product when the prices change, the demand will be more elastic. For example, if you are at the grocery store to buy English muffins but the store is out, you can easily choose to purchase bagels instead. Conversely, if there are relatively few or no alternatives, demand will be more inelastic. Consider the generic need for gasoline. It is fairly inelastic. The availability of substitutes for car travel is inconvenient. However, the demand for gasoline at specific gas stations is considered elastic because buyers can choose the gas station they prefer based on price. If 2 gas stations are located within a convenient geographic region to the buyer, they will choose the station that has lower prices. Income. Buyers have limited money to spend on their needs, and must make decisions on how the purchase of goods and services will impact their total income. The income effect is the way in which buyers see the change in price affecting their real income. Generally, an increase in price indicates that the buyer will have less money left over to spend. Therefore, they will choose to buy less of a product, decreasing demand. The opposite is also true. The lower a price, the more money buyers have to buy more of the product, thus increasing demand. Consider the 8.6% inflation that the United States saw between May 2021 and May 2022. Because inflation is a general rise in prices, consumers noticed that their purchases of goods and services caused their real income to decline. In other words, consumers had less money to spend on products and ultimately chose to purchase less of those products. Time. When the price of a good or service is changed, it takes time for buyers to adjust to the change in price. The time factor of price elasticity indicates that the product's elasticity of demand is dependent upon the time it takes buyers to adjust to the new prices. For example, if there is a sharp decrease in the price of automobiles, buyers would not immediately go out and buy a new vehicle. Rather, it would take some time to save money for a down payment, secure a loan, and generally go through the buying process. Therefore, the demand for automobiles would increase, but over time rather than immediately. Cross-elasticity of demand. What happens when one of two similar products has a price increase or decrease? If the price of coffee increases, it would be expected that the demand of tea, a substitute product, would also increase. Buyers see the price increase and look for lower-priced substitutes to replace the higher-priced item. The cross-elasticity of demand measures the amount demanded of one good when the price for a similar good or service changes. 27. Estimate costs. The next step in determining a pricing policy is to estimate the total cost of producing a product or service. Recall that maximizing profits is the goal of a pricing strategy, and marketers must factor the cost of doing business into pricing considerations. When estimating total costs, it is important to divide costs into fixed and variable costs. Fixed and variable costs. As mentioned earlier in this chapter, costs are categorized as either fixed or variable. Fixed costs are those expenses that do not change regardless of the number of units sold. Consider the example used earlier in the chapter of manufacturing a smartphone. If the company manufactures 1,000 or 100,000 smartphones, the company must pay the same amount for its lease on the property the plant is located on. The lease payment does not change based on the number of units produced. Alternatively, variable costs do change based on the number of units produced. In this same example, the amount manufacturing spends is dependent on the number of smartphones produced. Analyze the external environment. The fourth step in determining prices is to analyze the external environment. The external environment is comprised of factors outside of the organization that impact marketing decisions. While marketers cannot directly change these factors, they should be aware of how they might impact pricing decisions. One way to remember the factors of the external environment is through the acronym PESTLE: political, economic, social, technological, legal, and environmental. 28 questions to consider in a PESTLE analysis when analyzing the external environment as it relates to pricing are included in Table 12. 2 factors question example. Political: what is the current political situation as it relates to the market? A price cap on certain pharmaceuticals would limit the price a company could charge. Economic: what is the current economic climate? During inflation or deflation, prices may need to increase or decrease. Social: how is culture changing or shaping the industry? During the latter months of the year, the Indian market purchases more vehicles than at other times of the year. Technological: what technologies are trending? If technology for a product is becoming obsolete, a decrease in price may be necessary. Legal: what current legislation is impacting the industry? A new vehicle emission law may require new technology, thus increasing the price of vehicles. Environmental: what are the environmental concerns of the product? A highly toxic product or process may need to have a higher price to properly and safely dispose of byproducts. Table 12. 2 PESTLE factors. Link to learning. PESTLE analysis. There are hundreds of online resources that discuss PESTLE. Here are a few to start with. The the Corporate Finance Institute provides a pestle walkthrough. The Oxford College of Marketing outlines the advantages and disadvantages of a pestle analysis. Business to You provides a video, sample analysis, and a full list of pestle factors. Competitors, costs, prices, and products. It probably seems obvious by now that analyzing the competition is key in setting prices. Marketers must constantly analyze both current and potential competition in the market to understand how their products will measure up to that of the competition. If a competitor is planning to introduce a nearly identical product to one that your organization already has on the market, but at a much lower price, you will need to consider how that will affect your sales as well as analyze how it is offering such a lower price. Should you lower your price? Consider changing suppliers for lowered costs. Take a cut in profits to stay competitive. All of these questions and more will help you as a marketer determine what pricing strategy should be used. Stage in the product life cycle. How long a product and its substitutes have been in the market will have an impact on the marketer's choice of pricing strategies. Recall that the product life cycle consists of 4 stages: introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. During the introduction stage, marketers must choose pricing strategies wisely to capture the intended market and begin recuperating research and development costs. As a product moves through the other stages of the life cycle, prices may need to be changed in order to stay relevant to consumers. Status of the economy. As you can imagine, the state of the economy at any given time will have an impact on the buyer's ability to purchase products as well as their willingness to spend. Economic factors that marketers should specifically be aware of when considering demand for products include employment, inflation, interest rates, and consumer confidence. 29. One of the main factors that influences consumer demand is the employment rate. The unemployment rate is a measure of the number of people who are not employed but are actively seeking work in a given period, usually 1 month. When buyers are employed and receiving steady income, they are more likely to use discretionary income. Discretionary income is the money left over after all taxes and necessities, such as food and housing, are paid. When discretionary income decreases, demand for non-essential items also decreases. Inflation is an economic measure of the rate of rising prices of goods and services in an economy. When inflation occurs, prices for most goods and services rise. Therefore, the amount of discretionary income a buyer has decreases, and demand for non-essential goods and services also decreases. Consider the high inflation in the United States economy from 2021 to 2022, which was 8.6% as of May 2022. The rate of inflation is currently the highest that it has been since 1981. Because of the higher price of goods and services within the economy, consumers are spending more of their earned income on necessities such as food and shelter. This, in turn, causes them to purchase fewer non-essential items such as vacations, toys, and the like. Inflation also impacts pensions and other retirement accounts. So as inflation rises considerably, people are even less likely to spend their discretionary income and more likely to save anything left over after essentials for future use. 31. Even consumers who do not have a deep understanding of the economy have some degree of optimism regarding the overall state of the economy. This is known as consumer confidence. It measures how optimistic consumers are about the economy and their own finances. 32. When consumers have little optimism in the economy, they are more likely to save their discretionary income rather than spend it. The overall status of the economy, both current and future, is important for marketers to be aware of as it has a direct impact on the ability and willingness of buyers to spend money. Choosing pricing strategies that are aligned with the health of economy will have a greater chance of success. Select pricing strategies or tactics. After gathering all the data explained in previous steps, marketers are ready to set specific pricing strategies or tactics. The strategies and tactics chosen for a product or service should align with the other marketing mix elements, create value for the customer, and maximize profits for the company. In the next section, we will discuss specific strategies and tactics and how to optimize each. Knowledge check. It's time to check your knowledge on the concepts presented in this section. Refer to the answer key at the end of the book for feedback. 1. Sam is explaining to her friend Bate that prices for video conferencing software is increasing because more people are working from home. This relationship can be described by prestige pricing, customer-driven pricing, the demand curve, the income effect. 2. Each month you pay your rent. It is $800 and does not change based on the number of hours you work. This is known as a variable cost, fixed cost, changing cost, profit. 3. Decreases in prices are most often associated with which stage of the product life cycle? Introduction, growth, maturity, decline. 4. Adding fixed costs to variable costs yields which of the following? Total costs, profit, value, inflation. 5. When the price of a product increases and the demand for its substitute product increases, this is explained by elasticity, inelasticity, a change in income, cross-elasticity of demand. Learning outcomes. By the end of this section, you will be able to 1. List the pricing strategies for new products. 2. Explain each pricing strategy for new products. Price skimming. When a new product is introduced to the market, marketers often use one of 3 pricing strategies. Remember that when a company introduces a new product to the market, a good deal of financial resources have already been used even before the first unit is sold. Therefore, it is important for marketers to choose an appropriate price that both appeals to buyers and helps to recuperate the costs of research and development so that the company can begin to maximize profits more quickly. Price skimming is a new product strategy in which marketers choose to initially set a high price for a product or service and lower it over time. The goal of price skimming is to attract the segment of the market that is willing to pay the highest possible price for the product. Once achieved, the price is lowered to attract another segment of the market, and so on. The term skimming comes from the skimming the cream, layer by layer, from raw milk, or in this case, each segment of customers. Innovative technology often uses price skimming. For example, when Sony launched the PlayStation 3, it was set at a fairly high price of $599. With little competition and a well-established brand, it was successful. Each year thereafter, it lowered the price and gained new customers until it eventually reached a price of $299. 33. Market penetration pricing. The opposite of price skimming is penetration pricing. The penetration pricing strategy is one in which the new product or service is set at the lowest price possible. This strategy's objective is to penetrate the market or gain as many customers in all segments as possible from the beginning of the product life cycle. In the late 1990s, Netflix introduced its movie rental service. For a monthly subscription fee, users could rent 4 movies at a time with no return date. The low initial price targeted the most segments of the market and allowed customers to try the new service with little effort or financial impact. Break-even pricing. Break-even pricing is a pricing strategy in which marketers choose a price that will cover all of the costs of manufacturing. The break-even point is when the number of units produced equals the revenue for the product. The break-even point will produce 0 profit, but will cover all associated costs. The break-even formula is calculated by dividing the total fixed costs by the production unit price minus variable unit costs. The break-even point in units will tell a marketer exactly how many units must be sold in order to start making a profit. Break-even equals fixed costs, unit price minus variable unit costs. Let's look at an example. Assume you are opening a new gourmet cookie shop and you have estimated your projected costs. You'd like to know how many units you must sell in order to break even and then start making a profit. Let's assume your fixed costs are $20,000. This includes rent, deliveries, ingredients, and new signage. You have estimated your variable costs to be $1. $50 per unit, or cookie. You plan to charge $2. Per cookie, how many units must you sell to break even? Using the formula above, you find that you must sell 40,000 cookies in order to break even. Break even equals 20,000. 2 minus 1, 50. Break even equals 20,000. 0, 50 equals 40,000 units. Knowledge check. It's time to check your knowledge on the concepts presented in this section. Refer to the answer key at the end of the book for feedback. 1 Lewis is planning to introduce a new product to the market. Their aim is to gain as much of the market share as possible in the early introduction stage, so they are thinking of setting an initially low price. Which pricing strategy is Lewis using? Break-even analysis, price skimming, penetration pricing, psychological pricing. 2. Alexandra is working on the pricing strategy for her new food truck items. She is interested in knowing how many hamburgers she will need to sell in order to break even. Which formula should she use? Fixed costs plus variable costs. Fixed costs minus variable costs. Fixed costs slash unit price plus variable unit cost. Fixed costs slash unit price minus variable unit cost. 3. Tomas is selling his bottled sodas for $2 each at the vendor fair. His fixed costs are $100. He estimates that his variable costs are $0.25 per bottle. How many bottles of soda must Tomas sell to break even? 57. 2. Less than 1. 25. 4. Which of the following is true of price skimming? It captures the most market share in the introduction stage of a product. It is setting an initially high price of a product. It is setting an initially low price of a product. It determines break-even units. 5. David hopes to capture as much of the market as possible with the company's new product. Which pricing strategy should David use? Price skimming, cost-based pricing, psychological pricing, penetration pricing, learning outcomes. By the end of this section, you will be able to 1. List the pricing strategies and tactics for existing products. 2. Provide examples of each pricing strategy and tactic. Product line pricing. More often than not, marketers must make pricing decisions on existing products rather than new products. As products go through the product lifecycle, price changes will likely need to occur to maintain value for customers and continue to maximize profits. Some common strategies and tactics for existing products are discussed next. Many large companies offer multiple products and product lines in their product mix. One strategy for pricing products is to price products in a product line the same or similar. For example, Unilever is the manufacturer of many brands that you've likely heard of: Dove, Axe, and Hellmann's, to name a few. Within its host of products, Unilever has divided its products into price categories. Higher-priced items have a higher perception of value, and so on. Recall that a product line is a group of related products differentiated by features and price. Unilever sets a higher price for some of its product lines and lower price points for others in order to capture various target markets, known as product line pricing. See Figure 12. 7. A shopper stands in front of the meat section of the grocery store holding a package of beef. Figure 12. 7 companies utilize pricing strategies like product line pricing to appeal to various target markets through multiple products. Credit D2591 by Stephen Osmus/USDA/Flickr, CC by 20. Captive product pricing. Assume you need to purchase a new printer for your home computer. Once you buy the printer, you're also going to need to purchase what? That's right, ink. Captive product pricing uses a strategy that requires both a core product and a captive product. In the above example, the core product is the printer, and the captive product is the ink. When you are shopping for the printer, you are likely to take into consideration the price you will have to pay for ink as well. Marketers may price the printer at a very reasonable price, knowing it will catch your attention, and thus make the price of the ink seem less expensive. Captive product pricing maximizes profits by intentionally pricing both the core and captive products at a level that will increase the perceived value to consumers. Bundle pricing. Bundle pricing is another popular pricing strategy that marketers use to promote purchasing multiple products at once. Consider when you go to the drive-thru at your favorite fast food establishment. Ever notice that it is cheaper, or nearly so, to purchase a meal than each item individually? Have you ever gone to the drive-thru intending to get a cheeseburger, but feel compelled to get the value meal instead because it only costs a little more? This strategy is used to prod customers to purchase and spend more than they may have otherwise. Psychological pricing, odd-even pricing. One popular form of psychological pricing is odd-even pricing. Similar to price appearance discussed earlier in this chapter, odd-even pricing banks on human motivation to lure in customers. The odd in this pricing tactic refers to the odd number at the end of a price, such as $19, $95. Psychologically, the odd number in the price equates to value. The product is not $20, $0, it is still in the teens at $19, $95. Conversely, the even in the tactic utilizes even numbers at the end of the price, often zero, as in $50. This pricing tactic leads buyers to believe that the product is of higher quality because it is a nice, even number. Luxury items are often priced using the even side of odd-even pricing. Ever wonder how odd-even pricing got its start? Decades ago, retailers began using this pricing strategy not to lure customers, but rather to force cashiers to open their cash register drawers to make change, and thus record the sale. Over time, consumer psychologists studied the impact of odd-even pricing on consumption and found it to work. Economy pricing. When you are grocery shopping, are you surprised to see that name-brand products are priced much higher than store brands, even though the product is essentially the same? Does the name brand really cost that much more to produce? Well, yes and no. Brand name items spend considerably more on advertising than store brands. In order to recoup those costs, and based on the fact that name brands have a higher value perception to buyers, companies set prices higher for name brands. Economy pricing, on the other hand, is a tactic in which store brand prices are set much lower than their name brand competitors. The focus on these products is selling in high volume by lowering prices and minimizing advertising costs. Another example of economy pricing is used in the airline industry. Allegiant Air strives to offer no-frills air travel that is priced considerably lower than its competitors. But you have to get your seats fast at the lowest prices because the price increases as seats fill up. Oh, and if you want to travel with any luggage, you'll need to pay extra. Allegiant charges for any luggage other than one personal item. Knowledge check. It's time to check your knowledge on the concepts presented in this section. Refer to the answer key at the end of the book for feedback. 1. You are considering purchasing cable for your new apartment. You would really like to add HBO to your cable plan so you can watch some of the shows all of your friends are talking about. You can purchase basic cable for $49, $99 per month, and add HBO for an additional $12, $99 a month as a standalone edition. Alternatively, you can choose a package that includes HBO for $59, $99. Obviously, you will choose the less expensive package. The cable company is using which of the following pricing tactics? Product line pricing, odd-even pricing, bundle pricing, economy pricing. 2. Finley was tasked with setting the price of a new coffee maker that would utilize coffee pods instead of traditional coffee filters. Because customers would have to buy the pods in order to utilize the product, Finley should consider which pricing tactic: captive pricing, odd-even pricing, bundle pricing, economy pricing. 3. Thames is shopping for a new pair of jeans. He notices that one brand is priced at $49, $99, and another is priced at $50. He immediately chooses the pair priced at $50 because he believes they are of better quality. Which pricing tactic was used to help Thames make his decision? Odd-even pricing, captive pricing, bundle pricing, economy pricing. 4. Which of the following is not considered a pricing tactic for existing products? Odd-even pricing, price skimming, bundle pricing, captive pricing. 5. Daphne often buys store or generic brand items at the grocery store because they are so much cheaper than name brand items. Which pricing tactic is generally used for store or generic brands? Bundle pricing, cost-based pricing, psychological pricing, economy pricing, learning outcomes. By the end of this section, you will be able to 1. Identify ethical issues related to the pricing of products and services. 2. Describe the different types of unethical practices. Price fixing. Recall that ethics is defined as behaviors based on values and beliefs of right and wrong. In marketing, unethical behavior can have catastrophic consequences. If a customer's trust is broken with a product, their likelihood of continuing to do business with that company dramatically decreases. Companies practicing unethical behavior run the risk of not only losing customers and profits, but also facing legal consequences. Let's explore some unethical, illegal practices as they relate to pricing. Price fixing occurs when two or more competitors agree to set prices at a specific level. The practice of price fixing forces customers to pay higher prices than normal with no substitute alternatives. Consumers who purchased or leased certain automobiles were part of a class action lawsuit involving several automobile manufacturers. The brands, including Audi, BMW, Buick, Chevrolet, and many others, agreed to pay into the settlement after being accused of conspiring together to artificially inflate the prices of various auto parts. 34. Deceptive illegal price advertising. Deceptive price advertising is an unethical pricing practice in which the advertised price of a product is misleading to consumers. For example, let's assume a company advertised a product with a suggested retail price of $9.99, but is offering the same product for the low price of only $4.99. If the same product is actually priced in a market in the same country for $9.99, it is not considered deceptive. However, if the product is not priced at $9.99 in any other market, it is considered deceptive. Say you sell hats for a price of $29.99, but sales are sluggish. You decided to offer your hats, buy one get one free, but just before the sale starts, you raise the price of one hat to $59.99. Is this deceptive price advertising? Yes. This is not a bargain for consumers and is considered deceptive according to the Federal Trade Commission, FTC. Predatory pricing. Another unethical and usually illegal pricing strategy is that of predatory pricing. Predatory pricing occurs when a company prices goods or services so low that other companies cannot compete. Predatory pricing often entails a company selling products below its cost with the intent of driving out competition and creating a monopoly situation. Once competition is eliminated, the company will often increase the prices exponentially, not only to recuperate losses from the lower prices, but also to make more profit. Under various antitrust laws, this practice is illegal when it seeks to drive out competition and makes a market susceptible to monopolies. 35. In 2000, Walmart was accused by the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection of predatory pricing practices. The complaint stated that the company was selling staple goods, such as butter and milk, below cost with a goal to drive out competition and create a monopoly. 36. In short, predatory pricing undermines the free market where supply and demand sets prices. Price discrimination. Price discrimination is a pricing strategy that charges different prices to customers based on what the seller believes it can get the customer to agree to. This pricing strategy is not illegal so long as it does not cause specific economic harm. But marketers should be wary of using this price tactic, as it could lead to disloyal customers if they feel they are not getting the best price. Monopoly gouging. Monopoly gouging is when a seller increases the prices of goods and services that are not considered fair or competitive. If there are no or very few substitutes, a company may be enticed to force buyers to pay a much higher price, leaving them no options. When there are very few competitors in a market, such as utilities, the industry is highly regulated by the government. For example, your electric company cannot choose to randomly increase prices to increase profits. It must follow a regulated process when increasing prices. During the winter of 2020-2021, Texas experienced much colder and snowier conditions than usual. Millions were left without power and dozens lost their lives. As hotels began to fill up, prices skyrocketed. A Super 8 motel was shown on Hotels.com at nearly $400 night, exponentially higher than in ordinary times. Identifying price gouging is a bit more complicated than it seems. While basic economics would expect higher demand to equal higher prices, the practice of price gouging is not only unethical, but also illegal in many states when a disaster is announced. 37. Companies with a conscience. Warby Parker. Warby Parker sought to find a solution to the problem of expensive eyeglasses, a medical necessity for many people. The company stated that the eyewear industry was dominated by a single company that has been able to keep prices artificially high while reaping huge profits from consumers who have no other options. 38 Warby Parker set out to change the way in which glasses were offered to consumers. The company's direct-to-consumer approach and a uniform pricing strategy have made waves in the eyewear industry. All of Warby Parker's eyeglasses are not only priced lower than its competitors, but all of its eyeglasses are priced the same, $95. The average cost of eyewear was $263, making it difficult for some consumers to afford the needed glasses, and making it difficult for people to distinguish the value between a $200 pair of glasses and a $400 pair of glasses. 39. The company bypassed traditional supply chains and began making glasses in-house. It also talked directly to customers to understand the needs of the market and, in turn, is able to offer prescription eyeglasses at a fraction of the cost. In addition, it saw a global problem. Too many people need glasses but cannot afford them. That's why the company donates one pair of glasses for every pair sold.